Indices give up morning gains to trade near day's low. Nifty bank slips over 0.5%, led by large private banks. Defense stocks again for the second day. Metals and realty stocks also rise, with mid-caps putting up a better show. Tata Motors delivers a strong performance in Q4 FY25, with JLR achieving its aim to turning cash positive. But a cautious outlook on growth given the global uncertainties is a dampener. Bharat Airtel delivers a steady India performance with healthy subscriber addition, but the stronger show in Africa has a positive ring. Analysts remain upbeat on the stock. Economists pull down full-year FY26 CPI estimates to 3.5 to 3.8% after April consumer inflation came in at a six-year low of 3.16% and the wholesale price index at a one-year low of 0.85%. Majority of economists expect two more rate cuts from the RBI, but a growing number of 3 to 4 cuts more. Hello, good afternoon. You've tuned into Business Lunch, coming live from the CNBC-TV18 Motilal Oswal studios. I'm Vinny Motiwala. Thank you so much for tuning in. While we started today's trading session on a positive note and a strong footing, as of now, we're seeing a bit of a decline coming in the market. Almost at the day's lowest point is what we're seeing. The Nifty is trading at. So yes, managing to hold on to that slight bit of a green is what the Nifty50 is doing. Sensex is actually down and out and trading in the red. So look at the Nifty also. Went in the red and then came up again, just holding on to gains of 0.1%. Sensex is still trading in the red, almost nothing, not much of a gain there or decline. So flip-flopping between the red and the green maybe is what we could see coming in for the Sensex in the next half an hour or couple of hours as well. Bank Nifty, looking at that, that's seen a sharper fall from the day's highest point. Was managing to hold on to green till the first half of the trading session, and as of now is in the red. Mid and small cap, that's the outperformance coming in from that front. So yes, the Nifty mid cap holding on to gains of 0.8%, small cap holding on to gains of more than 1% as well. A lot of earning movers today. So Sirma, Metropolis, and Coromandel International. These are the ones that are seeing some bit of a pressure coming in because of their earnings, while Sai Life Sciences managing to hold on to good gains. A trend that is shaping up as well is also coming in for the defense shipbuilding kind of stocks. So GRSC, obviously they had their numbers as well, good numbers, but other than that, Cochin, Shipyard, Mazagon, that is managing to hold on to gains. And railway stocks, that's another trend which is chirped up in trade. Ircon International, Titagarh Rail, as well as RailTel, that is managing to hold on to good gains, but we've seen a bit of a dip coming in overall the trading session, especially on the Nifty as well as the Sensex side. Let's move on and actually start the show by talking about the CPI data that we had coming in. Now, India's April CPI, that came in at a six-year low of around 3.16%. That was dragged down by the food inflation. In further good news, the wholesale price index for April has also come in at one-year low of 0.85%. Most of the economists are now lowering their full-year CPI estimates to below 4%. Let's go across to Lata, who's joining in with us to give us a roundup on what is happening on this front. Lata, afternoon.
Yes, every inflation number that we are getting is coming in below estimate. The CPI for April, 3.16, our poll had indicated 3.2%, and largely because of food, that's come in at a 3.5-year low or a 42-month low of 1.78%. Cereals, pulses and vegetables have fallen the most month on month. One can understand cereals and pulses because the Rabi harvest comes in, but vegetables normally inch up in April. The fact that they have fallen and fallen by a good 7% is seen as extremely positive. A word on core CPI, which is non-food, non-fuel, the more steady part of inflation, that's risen by 4.1, but that's largely because of gold and silver. You take that out, then that is also 3.4%. Remember, the RBI's mandate is to keep inflation at 4%, and now on all major headings, the inflation is way below the 4% mark. The wholesale price index for April was also a shocker, coming in at 0.85%. The dipstick poll I did gave a number of 1.2%. So even over there, surprises on the downside. There it is dragged down severely by fuel prices, which fell at the wholesale level but didn't get passed on to the consumer, to us, because of the higher excise duty. Now, we will concentrate more on CPI because the RBI's mandate is on CPI, keeping it at 4, not on WPI. What we hear from economists is they've all reduced their CPI forecast for the full year from the earlier 4%, which is the RBI forecast, to between 3.5% and 3.8%. For instance, Goldman Sachs actually is looking at the May CPI at 2.9. So you can imagine the kind of falls that inflation is expected. Kotak and ICRA are the two people who have reduced the CPI for the full year to 3.5%, and some others like MK, HDFC Bank, and even Citibank. Citibank is at 3.8, MK, HDFC Bank at 3.7. But the point is, everyone is looking at the 12-month inflation at below 4%. So the guess obviously is what will RBI do. Even now, the majority are expecting only 2 cuts more. Already 2 cuts are done. Repo is at 6. It's expected to go to 5.5. But there are a growing number of economists who believe it could be 3, like the economist in ICRA and MK. And there's at least one who's expecting 4 more cuts, taking the repo to 5%, and that's from Kotak. I think that tribe will increase, the number of people expecting more than 2 cuts.
Absolutely. That will be interesting to watch out throughout the year as well, and where the inflation data is going to be coming in, especially given that, most of them are cutting their estimates now to below that 4% mark. But moving on and getting more stock specific, let's talk about Tata Steel, the top Nifty gainer today. After a brokerage upgraded the stock, we have Nigel to give us more details on this front. Nigel, afternoon.
Well, Tata Steel is high in today's trading session. And to be fair, in yesterday's interview to CNBC-TV18, the management had made a couple of very, very positive points. So I'll make 3 big headers out here. One is on pricing. They said that current prices here in India are 3,000 rupees higher on a sequential basis. Even in Europe, they have said that the pricing is much higher. So there's an improvement both in Europe as well as India. That's point number 1. Point number 2, on the coking coal consumption cost, they said they're expecting some softness. It could be down by close to $10 on a per ton basis. And point number 3, they gave a guidance on EBITDA. Europe, they said, turns back into the green, which is phenomenal. Good news out there, though UK will continue to struggle, at least initially. But in the next few quarters, they're expecting even the UK business that's been given the big loss, that as well, to turn into the green, which is a positive. Remember, as of now, Netherlands has turned into the green, and that will likely move it, stay in the green. But UK turning around at some part of the year as well is a positive. Nuvama, they have gone ahead. They have upgraded the stock. The target price has been raised to around 177 rupees per share. They've increased their EBITDA estimates by around 6% because now they're factoring in higher profits in Europe and also lower fixed costs. They are estimating the EBITDA to go up by around 2,000 rupees on a sequential basis because of higher steel prices, lower cost, and also they are saying that volumes could be a little bit softish, but both these two will offset the lower volumes. And finally, they are building in better numbers coming in from Europe. So put all this together, Tisco is reacting in today's trading session. But to be fair, the commentary from the management itself ahead of their con call here on CNBC-TV18 was extremely positive.
Thank you so much for that, Nigel. But moving on from the top Nifty gainer to the top Nifty loser today, we have Tata Motors in that list. And this is after its 4th quarter numbers. What are they looking like? What are more details coming in on this front? Sudarshan is joining in with us for that. Good afternoon, Sudarshan.
Good afternoon, Vinny. So Tata Motors yesterday post-market had reported earnings for Q4 FY25, and those earnings were largely better than estimates. But why the stock is under pressure, it's down almost 2% currently. It's on the back of the cautious outlook. Company is saying that in China, things are not that great, while the situation has improved a bit in UK and Europe. But the problem related to the tariffs are going to be an overhang, and the company is saying that exports that would be done from UK plant, for that tariff is increased by 300% to 10% from 2.5%, and exports to be done from EU plant, for that tariff would be increased to tariff would be increased by 3,000%. So those will remain an overhang. Now, after that, majority of the brokerages have turned negative. But first, I'll start with the brokerage which is positive. That is CLSA. It maintains outperform call, and target is 805. It says Q4 earnings have met estimates, but JLR is cautious in demand in FY26. But company is confident in delivering EBIT margin for FY26. Jefferies maintains underperform call, target is 630. It says Q4 EBITDA was down 2% year-on-year, but 4% higher than the estimates. But it believes that JLR may have a tough FY26 on tariffs, increasing costs and increasing competition in China. It has cut FY26-27 EBITDA estimates by 8%, but has raised EPS estimates by 3 to 4%. Nomura has downgraded the stock to reduce and target is 799, and Kotak Institutional Equities has downgraded the stock to reduce and target is 600. So earnings were above estimates, but on the back of cautious outlook, stock is under pressure.
Cautious outlook is keeping the stock under pressure, as of now down 2%. But let's move on and talk about some more details that have come in on MSCI. They have released their quarterly review today. We have Vivek joining in with us to give us and tell us actually what are the changes to the global standard index. Vivek, take it away. Good afternoon.
Well, that's right. Good afternoon. So MSCI overnight or very early today morning has gone ahead and announced the changes as per the MSCI May 2025 quarterly index review. Now, these adjustments, remember that that MSCI has announced, will take place on the trading session of 30th May 2025. As far as the global standard index is concerned, they have made two additions from the Indian stock market to the MSCI. Which are the two additions? Coromandel International, IIFL Capital estimates that there could be inflows of close to $227 million into Coromandel. The other stock that will make its way into the MSCI is Nykaa. A little over $180 million is what that particular stock can hope to garner. As far as the passive indices are concerned, that will go ahead and make the changes in trade on May 30th. Now, along with that, there are actually quite a few additions and deletions as far as the small cap index is concerned. Almost 11 additions and 22 deletions from the small cap index. Overall, India continues to remain the second largest or second position as far as the MSCI EM index is concerned in terms of weightage. Overall, a positive development for Coromandel as well as Nykaa.
Okay, Vivek, thank you so much for that. But on that note, we're going to step into a very short break, viewers. And when we return, we'll get you the latest on India and Pakistan tensions, what's happening on that front. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Business Lunch on CNBC TV18. Now moving on, the meeting of the Cabinet Committee of Security concluded a while back. We have Abhimanyu who's joining in with us to give us the details of this meeting. Abhimanyu.
A meeting of the CCS and the Union Cabinet concluded some time back at the Prime Minister's residence. This was the second meeting held after the commencement of the Operation Sindoor and the fourth meeting held after the terror attack in Pahalgam. While there is a pause on hostilities between India and Pakistan, the pause continues on military action. However, the vigil has been stepped up across the land, sea and air borders by different forces to ensure no misadventure or untoward incident by any element. It remains to be seen how the situation is going to pan out, even as de-escalation efforts continue from India's side. Also, India's BSF Jawan, who was held by the Pakistani forces, has been released. And in another development, India had expelled an official working with the Pakistani High Commission in New Delhi. And a similar action in retaliation has also been taken by Pakistan. So clearly, de-escalation efforts are continuing, but still there is skepticism over the actions by Pakistan and the kind of provocative statements which have been made by several Pakistani leaders and the entire Pakistani leadership in the recent past. Also, India till now has rejected any efforts or claims by any other country to intervene between India and Pakistan as far as dispute resolution is concerned, be it countries like United States or China. So clearly, de-escalation efforts are being looked at and the vigil continues to be high on the Indian side.
Thank you so much for that, Abhimanyu. But moving on to some updates related to India-Pakistan tension, the chief of India's three services called on President Draupadi Murmu and updated her about the Operation Sindoor. The president's official handle on X commended the valor as well as the dedication of the armed forces that made India's response to terrorism a sterling success. Now, even as the situation along the border with Pakistan remains calm, US President Donald Trump again took credit for the cessation of hostilities and Pakistan on his Saudi trip. Meanwhile, US Department of State Principal Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott emphasized the importance of direct communication between both the countries. Listen in.
India has refused any US effort to mediate between India and Pakistan. How hopeful you are that you will be able to bring them together in the same room for talks?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that. What I can say is that we encourage direct communication. We have been clear on that. We continue to encourage that direct communication. The president has been clear on that. And the president, as I said, has also been clear in praising both prime ministers for choosing the path towards peace and the wisdom and fortitude that shows.
Has US sent a team to Islamabad or Pakistan following the reports that there have been leaks of nuclear radiation in some of the secured Pakistani sites?
I have nothing to preview on that at this time.
Let's move on. The Supreme Court welcomed a new Chief Justice today. Earlier today, Justice B.R. Gavai took oath. Now, President Draupadi Murmu conducted the swearing-in ceremony. Ashmit is joining in with us again to give us details on this front. Ashmit.
Well, Justice B.R. Gavai, assuming charge as India's 52nd Chief Justice, the President today administered the oath to the new CJI in the presence of the Prime Minister as well as the entire top deck of the government. Now, bear in mind, this is for the records book. He'll only be the second judge from a scheduled caste community to come to the top chair of the Indian judiciary. He will, however, have a brief tenure of just a little over 6 months. He's due to retire in November of this year. Now, speaking of his journey, he began his journey in 1985, first as a lawyer. In 2003, he was elevated to the Bombay High Court, and in 2019 he was elevated to the highest court of the country, the Indian Supreme Court. And since then, he's had a prolific body of work, over 700 benches, over 300 judgments that he's authored. And speaking of judgments, in January of 2023 is when he was a part of the bench that had upheld the 2016 demonetization exercise. Later that year, in 2023, in December, is when he was a part of a bench that had upheld the abrogation of Article 370. Cut to 2024, he was a part of a bench that struck down electoral bonds and their legality. Subsequently, he also was a part of a 7-judge bench that had granted states the right to subclassify the SC/ST quota. And further, in December of last year is when he had come down heavily on bulldozer demolition by various state governments as a form of penal action. So a phenomenal body of work. The Indian judiciary looking now to him for leadership for the next 6 months.
Thank you so much for that, Ashmit. But on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. And here's some good news coming in for our viewers. India's business news leader is now a click away. Introducing CNBC TV18's all-new app. Get instant access to breaking news, in-depth articles and financial world updates at your fingertips. Download the CNBC TV18 app now from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, or you can just scan the QR code on your screens. Welcome back to Business Lunch on CNBC TV18. You know, we have HAL that has reported their numbers. Just quickly taking a check because the stock has fallen after its numbers. Revenue is down 7.2%. EBITDA is also seeing a decline coming in, and margins are also under pressure versus last year. So keep an eye on that. EBITDA is down 10.2% on a year-on-year basis, and stock has seen a bit of a dip coming in after the numbers were reported. So that's something that we're watching out for. But let's move on to some other important news flow that's coming in. Microsoft has said that it is laying off 3% of employees across all levels, teams and geographies, which is affecting about 6,000 people, marking the largest round of layoffs since the elimination of nearly 10,000 employees we saw in 2023. Now, the company said that they continue to implement organizational changes to positions the company for which will position them for a success in terms of a dynamic workplace. This comes after the company announced a small round of layoffs in January that was performance based. So that is the update that we have coming in on Microsoft. Now let's move on to the latest on trade negotiations. US trade negotiator Jamison Greer is in an exclusive interview to CNBC said that 10% universal tariff will rebuild domestic manufacturing. Let's listen in.
The focus of this agreement and the talks over the weekend were really to address the current escalated situation, which was tantamount to an embargo, which was not sustainable for either side. So we're able to get to a position where the United States still has substantial tariffs on China. China retained some, not nearly as much as we did, but we're in a position where we can actually talk. We can do it constructively. And to your point, taking down non-tariff barriers, of which there are many, China's the largest challenge by far on that front. That will take time, but the Chinese, they want to talk about it, we want to talk about it, and we'll see where that leads. I'm going for my standing call with the Indian Commerce Minister, who's my counterpart on trade matters. Then this afternoon, I'm flying to Korea to meet with the Korean Trade Minister over the next coming days, as well as trade ministers from many other Asian countries who are gathering for APEC meetings. So all of this is happening in parallel, and we are happy to move as quickly as other parties are willing to move. Everyone saw the UK move very quickly. In Switzerland, in between all the meetings with the Chinese, I met with the Swiss president. They want to accelerate things. So we're moving as quickly as we possibly can with folks who want to be ambitious. We just want to make sure we have secure supply chains, we get as much production back home as possible, and having a 10% global tariff, that's going to help reduce the trade deficit, which is the primary driver of the whole program.
Okay, now getting you the latest on Trump-related developments. We have Dia joining in with us in our special segment Trump Watch to take us through all of that.
Big headlines this morning, from high-stakes diplomacy in the Gulf to shifting U.S. policy at home. With billions on the table, sanctions in motion and lawsuits flying, a busy week is unfolding on multiple fronts. U.S. President Donald Trump kicked off his West Asia tour, securing a $600 billion investment pledge from Saudi Arabia, covering sectors like energy, defense and mining. Trump, touting the visit as a landmark in U.S. Gulf relations, went a step further, saying he expects the kingdom's total investment in the U.S. to eventually reach $1 trillion. President Donald Trump also said he would order the lifting of sanctions on Syria at the behest of Saudi Arabia's crown prince, in a huge boost for interim Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara as he seeks to stabilize a country shattered by war. Foreign Minister Assad al-Sharbani said he welcomed Trump's announcement, calling it a pivotal turning point for the Syrian people. Meanwhile, Trump also sent a stern warning to Iran. Speaking in Riyadh, he offered what he called a new path, but threatened massive maximum pressure if Iran rejects renewed nuclear talks. Let's listen into what he said.
I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero like I did before. If you know that, they were a virtually bankrupt country because of what I did. They had no money for terror. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah.
And the pressure is already on. The US took a fresh step, seeking to curb Iran's oil revenues with sanctions on an international network that it said facilitates the shipment of millions of barrels to China, an effort by the Trump administration to further pressure Tehran while negotiating over its nuclear program. According to officials, the sales support Iran's military and its development of ballistic missiles and drones. In a speech, President Trump also voiced hope that Saudi Arabia will eventually recognize Israel, calling it a key step toward broader regional peace. Meanwhile, back in the US, the administration is tightening the purse strings. Harvard University is facing another $450 million in federal funding cuts, adding to the $2.2 billion slashed just last week. And lastly, a major legal challenge is brewing in the United States. 20 states, including California, New York, and Illinois, have filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security, accusing the federal government of illegally conditioning billions in funding on cooperation with immigration enforcement. The states argue the move oversteps congressional authority and are asking a federal court to block the policy. That's all we have for today. Now, back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Dia. But that's all the time we have on this edition of Business Lunch on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, your Midcap Radar.